Continues. You would think that the time that they appointed to get married came out on the first day of the week. Notice that he has to go and give her food and feed her from that point on. Tashonino to be married on the fourth day of the week. That is a phrase. The phrase that's in the Mishnah in this mimer of Rabbi Huda Omer Shmuel. What's the phrase? The phrase is the reason why a virgin should get married on a day, and that reason that's mentioned in the Mishnah is if he has a virginity, he can rise up early in the morning to go to the restroom. That's the phrase he left on at first. Let's explain the reason. This is the way we learn it. A young girl, when her would-be husband goes into her, asks her to marry him. So ask her to marry. She gets that much time together. She's alerted on the second stage of marriage, prepare herself with takshitin, with the various jewelry that a lady. Farnes, what does it mean to farnes? Voloshan Amzeh, the language of this people, the people in French, that was the word that they used, people French. A widowed lady, Shloshim, you only give 30 days. She's talking about a young girl, never was married before, she needs more time. He doesn't marry her to the second stage of marriage. Later on, will explain that the groom is withholding the marriage.
What about
whatever she needs to set up a household?
You mean like pots and stuff?
I presume I wasn't there at the time. Yes, in some ways, yes. She eats from him if he delays the marriage. Mere fact, she eats from her. Why does he have to feed her? The husband is obligated to feed his wife from one of the decrees of reversing to Perik Naro. The beginning of the chapter called it gives this whole series of things that the husband is married to a lady,
Isn't it?
Perik Naro. Yeah, Naro later on here in this Gemara. It is in the Gemara. That's the first word in that one day, but 12 years in one day, it's different status. She's Naro, we consider her already a person that's already a bastas. She has now to make a intelligent who she would like to live with as a wife without asking permission, or she can marry herself off without asking her father's permission. 12 and a half years of age. The third status, which she remains the rest of her life, that's called bogless. At that point, she has conquest. When the father is carry off the daughter at a younger age, as the of any she may have her lifetime, any her mother, the father cannot of that she inherited them, but it's hers. It's a separate fund for her. Now the position that her father originally had. The husband also gets these privileges. Also favors b'chayao. He can eat the fruits of real estate while she's alive. He's married to her. He gets that benefit. The father doesn't have that, but the husband would have that benefit. To feed her. In turn, he has that for kuno, and he's also obligated to. If she was captured, this is one of the professional mourners, and somebody to mourn for the dead person. Of mourning.
I can see why.
And he quotes you a place. You should look at that place and see if you can understand what it says. All right. Truma. She can eat truma. In koinu, if he was a kohen and he delayed the marriage, he has to. He bas Yisrael. She's a daughter of a regular Jew.
Truma, the males.
The female, the members of the truma is the Jewish farmer pays certain agricultural taxes. Before he could eat his crop, he had to set aside, the truma is 2% of his crop to the kohen. Got to give to the kohen. Only the kohen. And the kohen or his immediate family can eat it. Or if he has a Jew, also that slave can eat it.
What about the sacrifices?
We're talking about truma. One thing. And the lady would have been given by the Jewish farmer meiser, which is 10%. That's called meiser rishon. And the lady in turn would give us meiser rishon, they received from Israel, to the kohen. That's called trumas meiser. The kohen would get 2% from the Israel and 1% more from the lady would be left with 9% of the crop. Basically, the kohen would have 3%.
And in the beginning it's very small, but later on.
It could be his wife, truma, like we learned, common later on, got on days. The kohen acquires a person. In this case, his wife. Yosef is saying, to let you know, to not him from getting married. In other words, if there is something that beyond the person that's called an onus, an accident, that stopped him from getting married on any other day except when he shouldn't be penalized or be forced to feed her until he actually does marry, even though the time came that he had arranged originally to marry her. Of course, that the decree of the sages stops him from getting married. Of the marriage, the delay in the marriage is not his doing. Master of Avram, remember, it has the saying, he gets married on his fourth day because of complaints. First he leaves out that statement, that clause. He wonders on the words of his teacher. But Omar, he says, Omar came. What is this that Shmuel should say this way? Also that Rabbi Yosef had been sick. So therefore he wondered on his first words, which left out that key phrase, and because he wants to go to the Bezdin. So he asked him for himself, Toli Tanya, you're hanging something that we learned, that's the Mishnah. But the Lo Tanya, what we didn't learn, the reasoning of the Mishnah, Shenuya, the Mishnah that we learned, it doesn't make sense to be a parallelist. It's just like in the Mishnah said, in order for the condition that they can rise up early to go to make a complaint with that phrase. And that phrase, it's not the way we learned it. So it's a difficult to Rabbi Yosef. Hey, Tanya, the Mishnah, with its phraseology, correct phraseology, hey, lo Tanya, and look inside it. Tanya before that we learned, we learned something that doesn't explain the reasoning. And that's what's his difficulty. Mishnah say no, our Mishnah, the reason is explained inside of it. And it doesn't get married. There is no reason to explain what's the reason. What's the reason? So you understand this one. Pick something up for the daughters of Israel. Same scenario would not be working about one person is and one person isn't. And given by God from all the Rabbonim, allows the great fathers, the Jewish fathers.
Isn't the phrase Torah also just a general phrase meaning what?
No, Torah law is not necessarily. Torah, what was given at Sinai, the laws of the rabbis is a different. It's a fence to the Torah law. Both are necessary to protect us against this Masifta that they based on. And then it's also printed in Shasbar tiny. And then you go on to the next Masifta, printed in this Mashas Gemara that's in Gilo. Then the next Gemara talks there a lot about the laws of it says this. Omar Lebar, the son of Hey, said to Hillel, might see what is written in Malachi. Malachi was one of the last of the being of the prophets in the 3rd chapter. Meshavtem, return your Isem, and at that time, at the time when God will have the Melech Mashiach, between a righteous person, how God treats a righteous person, and how God treats a wicked person. Then Ovid Elohim, let him in. I wanted to at any rate, Gemara, difference between a servant of God and one that's not a servant of God. So the title, a servant of God, is a very the servant of God is the title that the Torah gives to, and the title that not only Moshe Rabbeinu is given that title, Eved Hashem, but also Yeshua is called Eved Hashem, the servant of God. And the servant of God is a tremendously, very, very honorable title to receive. When a person is a servant of God, as we'll learn in this Gemara days, I will read it to you, it's a tremendous indication of the person going on in serving God. And this is what it says. I'm reading it now, Test Amud Beis, in case any of you want to look at it at another time. Marhei said to Hillel, Malik see, what is it written? Shaftem, and I will return you. This time with Malachi, while it handles a righteous person and a wicked person. So here you have a clear statement that's said by the prophet. Now the Gemara is trying to find out what does that mean. So the Gemara first asks the question: is it mean I know tzaddik? Are you trying to say this pasuk means tzaddik is one that's called a person that serves God? Servant of God, and Hainu Rasha, when you mention the word Rasha, Hainu Asher Lo Avda, that superficially appears to be the answer of that pasuk. Because I'll read the pasuk to you again. In Malachi, the 3rd chapter, you'll see the difference between Asher Lo Avdo, a person that does not serve God, servant of God. I know Russia, I know Asher Lo Avdo, and it must be that the one that's considered that doesn't serve God. That's the simplistic, superficial analysis that Rabbi thinks it means. You see, the problem is, it doesn't necessarily mean what we think it means. One that is a servant of God, and one that is not a servant of God, they are both complete righteous people. There it is. A person that doesn't serve God is still not a person that doesn't serve God is still to be called a tzaddik, a complete tzaddik. So what's the difference? Why do you call one? Why? And you can't. It says like this. Comparison is like this. Eino Duma, you cannot compare. Shona Pirko, if a person studies his chapter, what chapter he learned in Torah, or wherever he learned 100 times, that certainly shows diligence. And a person reviews and goes over and over again 100 times, why we should do that, everything too, that would be. You cannot compare such a person that his learning 100 times, a person that reviews his learning 101 times, just a little more than that tremendous amount of 100 times, that makes a person a different, and serves God, even though he's complete, and even though he reviews, is not necessarily considered Ovid Hashem. Whereas a person that goes 101 times is called an Ovid Hashem, a person that serves God, an Eved Hashem, a servant of God. So, in other words, the difference between a person that's considered a true servant of God and a person that is not considered a true servant of God is really very little. But the difference between those two is that one earns the title of a servant of God and one does not. When one goes all out, I'm going to test on the base. We were discussing last time, just before my son came here last time, he was asked what was the Gemara that says the difference between a servant of God and not a servant of God. I'll repeat it again for your sake. Hillel said to Hillel, what does it mean written in the 3rd chapter of the last of the prophets? Shot them at the time of God, the difference between God handles a righteous person and handles a wicked person. So between a person that serves God and one that doesn't serve God. So it's very simple. What do you have to explain to me that passage? It's clear. A person that's called a righteous person, I know Russia, I know Abdul. And the one that's a wicked person is the one that doesn't. It's meaning, what do you say it means? It says to no, that's not the meaning of it. If a person is called a person that serves God, a person is called he doesn't serve God, both of these types of persons, Tzadiki Umuri, they're both considered completely righteous people. So it's not the way you think the pasuk means. But the Eino Duma, you cannot compare. Shona Pirkos, Male Podim, a person that wrote his chapter of the Torah, whatever he learns, 100 times, which is a tremendous amount of time. Nowadays, if a person over 2 or 3 times, you consider him tremendous. 100 times. The Shona Pirko Male, so a person that studies views 101 times, then that tremendous effort of the first time. One is called an Eved Hashem, the one that goes a little further, and one is not called an Eved Hashem, a servant of God. Even though both of them are tzaddikim. So, because of what time that's lacking in his review, are you going to call him one that doesn't serve God? So he'll answer them, hey, that is true. I'll give you an example that is true. From an example. To the marketplace where you go there where people rent donkeys. Now you have a place to rent a car. Because they drive donkeys. Rent a car. Sora Parsi Bazut. They used to also charge by the mileage. 10 miles, you had to pay a zuz. That's a certain amount of money. Parsi, but if you travel more than 10, even 11 miles, 3 zuz, you have to pay. So you already see that the price is doubled. even though it's just a small amount in relation to everything. So once you go over the amount, you're in a different bracket. It's like when you make more money, you're in a bigger... There is a point when the Rabbi Shalom looks at us, and we are given opportunity after opportunity, very generous about that. Whatever you want to do, there are opportunities to do proper things. And of course, there are opportunities we have to strengthen ourselves not to do the improper things, and to do the proper. That is what it's all about. If we go all out in the service of God, we do as much as we can, more perhaps than we really realistically expect we could do. You never know how much you really can do until you really throw yourself into the service of God. And such a person that throws himself into the service of God with a bad one, just throwing yourself into the service of God, as many as such a person is called an Eved Hashem, servant of God. If you just do it with a measure, even though the measure is a tremendous measure, still not an Eved Hashem. You may be a tzaddik brahman, maybe a complete righteous person, but an Eved Hashem you're not. No, this is just an example.
Does it say that?
No, God rewards us, of course, not only with what we do, but how much effort we have to do it. To generate production in an area where you're going almost all out is a tremendous accomplishment. It could be very small if you want to analyze it. But that difference is the difference between a person that's really without reservation serving God and what. I'm not chalilah saying that's a terrible thing. Otherwise, we should all be reviewing everything we learned at least 100 times. It's a tremendous thing. We all no question about it. The thing is that you have to go and understand that what God is asking of us. He's asking us to maximize our performance. To earn the title Eved Hashem. What's called Eved Hashem. They went all out. A lot of them called Eved Hashem. No problem. Now, while I'm here in the same Gemara, there was another question in the fire. This time, Omar le Eliyahu, Eliyahu said to Omar le the Rabbi Eliezer. Another one says in Isaiah, Memches, the 48th chapter. In it, Torah Behold, I will below the Kesef, but not V'charticho. I will choose you. Kur is what's that type of a malevolent? Kill. A kill of poverty. I will furnace of poverty. Malami, we learn from here, the Gemara said, God went around to look for the greatest standard that he could give to the Jewish people. For what purpose is this standard? It's the purpose of humbling us so that we can be proper servants of God. Anybody that is not a proper candidate to be a God-fearing individual was a Rishon. He lived even before Rashi's time, commentary, and he says like this. He says, for what purpose is humble us? He says like this, that the days that their heart should be broken, and also the Shemayim, and their intent is towards heaven, and their eyes looking for His mercy and for His grace. And that we should realize where our blessings come from. Where will we get anything that we need from God? Once we appreciate the fact that we are necessarily, every area, it doesn't at all, it's not at all easy, it's not at all. Once you realize, actually, in a spiritual sense, in a physical sense, in any sense you might think it's dependent on God. So once you appreciate that, with the clarity that you should, all the service that God asks of you would be without any question, without any difficulty to resolve that you want to do it as best you can. So this the Gemara says. Overlay Eliyahu, it says it this way. We learned, went over and reviewed all the good standards within Israel for keeping the Jewish people. We found nothing better than poverty. For what purpose? For humbleness. Omar Shmuel says, I know that people say, Yo ani yosef, poverty, towards a sumka, say a euro. It's like a stripe on a white horse. It's outstanding. See, so it's like a painted white thing. It's outstanding. It shines there. I've quoted this more a lot of times. He says that you have a lot of poverty, and it's the best thing that God can possibly give you. So I joked something. I didn't realize that I deserve so much good. Whatever it is. Okay, let's get back to the Gemara we were learning at the beginning of Kesuvos. Gentlemen, I've gone over to Kesuvos. Now, what we're going to do today is we're going to go over together words, and you're going to all repeat it after me, because what's necessary is now we're trying to get you to the point where you actually recite yourself in class. You don't have to be frightened. You'll make mistakes. The only one that learns Gemara and makes makes mistakes in learning Gemara is one that learns Gemara. You never make any mistakes, but you don't make any progression either. And it's very necessary that we approach the study of Gemara as a challenge. And hopefully, with God's help, we'll be able to meet it. I'll read the Mishnah, gentlemen, and I'll translate it. I want you all to read it after me, word by word. I've been acquainted with the language up to now. Say the word. Say Naphtali, Mesula. Mesula means a virgin. Nisas is to be married. Tzedzejo. The Yom HaRabi, on the 4th day of the week. That's a widow lady. On the 5th day. Amin b'Shabbos. Amin b'Shabbos. Because twice during the week, the word Shabbos here doesn't mean the day of Shabbos. It means the week. You could say another word, Shabbat b'Shavua. Could be another word like that. Shavua meaning the 7-day period. Upon Shabbos, because twice during the week, say it. The Bezdin, the tribunals are sitting in the cities. On the 2nd day, or Yom HaChamishi, if there was to him, that's the groom, complaints about if he consummates a marriage, he can rise up to go early to the Bezdin. Remember, it says in the Gemara, Abraham rose up early in the morning. See, this is one of the signs of a righteous type. A righteous type gets up early in the morning to do mitzvahs. And that's what we have to emulate. A lot of times in shul in the morning, especially in the winter time, it's dark. And yet, if we are trying to do the will of God, we get up early. Is there anybody bold enough to want to go and say, try it? I won't be critical in any. Joe, will you try?
So, Nisas,
Translate it.
A widow,
Yeah.
The courts are sitting in the cities.
So, practically,
The 2nd day, he gets up and goes to Vista. It's early. Where to get early from that?
Oh, it's to get up early.
You mean the phrase is early? Let's get up. Get up.
Oh, yeah. Abraham got up early in the morning. Not that he got up.
Where do you get there?
It means early. Otherwise, it would come back okay. He rises in the morning, but getting early. Anybody else is, listen, I'm not sure anything of that kind. What does that mean? I'm going to learn the Rashi, and I want you all to repeat after me, word by word, translate it as I translate it, so you'll get the flow of it coming out of your lips. Not only you hear it from here, but your ears, the Eurodea, Reish Membo, which talks about Talmud Torah, about learning of Torah. One of the things it says, so that you can retain it, is that not just read it with your eyes, but say it with your lips, and then your ears can hear it concentrating on it, can come a little more deeper into your, and there's no really a secret this. If you go on your own, go over it as many times as necessary, until it flows like you say Ashrei. After you say it enough times, it will flow. And you will know every single word there. And that'll be a tremendous accomplishment. Once you know every single word here, and you review it several times, you will never forget it. Every word you'll remember. When you come in another context, this is a wonderful thing. But we have to read that too. Mesula Misas Yom HaRabi. You should get married on the 4th day. Read it, gentlemen.
So,
what does it mean?
that la Yom HaRabi.
Takonis Chachomim. He repeated after me, gentlemen. This is a decree is something to make something better. In this case, a decree. Chachomim of the wise ones. Shabbos. that she should get married on the fourth day of the Shabbos. That she should get married on the fourth day of the week. Like we'll explain the reasoning. We'll explain the reasoning in the Gemara. Because twice Rashi is going to explain Apsula Koi. It goes on the phrase talking about the virgin. On the virgin is going. This is Koi. It's going on. This is twice during the week is concerned with the case of the Koi. On the case of the Sula, the first phrase of the Mishnah. Not Basula Koi. On the case of the Sula is it Koi. Koi means on. It is profound view, yes. It is one of 10 decrees. He could, as Ezra HaSofer made a decree in his Bezin that had to be among